Welcome to Sunday service. Thank you for joining us this Sunday. We're just going to start in probably about a minute or so. So settle in and enjoy the delightful program.
Takes me about 20 minutes. Well, I guess.
Also,
Everything I highlighted right off.
2 years old. Oh, yes.
I know, but
Thank you, Jason, and welcome. That was really lovely. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Door County. I am Alan Kopishki, he, him, and I am your service leader this morning. It's so nice to see you all here. And if you're joining us online, hello. Nice pajamas. I'd also like to acknowledge here the First Nations people who are the original inhabitants of this region, including the Ho-Chunk, the Menominee, the Potawatomi, among several First Nations of Wisconsin. I'd like to remind you that concealed carry is still legal here, and in gatherings like this, they can go off. So if you would please attach the silencer or turn it off, we'd really appreciate that. That goes for you too. It is our custom here to ask those of you who may be here with us for the first time, or maybe the first time in a long time, to introduce yourselves if you're comfortable. Maybe tell us where you're from, what your pronouns are, and what brings you here today. If you are comfortable doing so, please stand and Dick will find you and bring you the mic. Is there anybody who meets that today? Okay. All right. Well, welcome. It's March, a time of impending renewal and opportunity, a good time to reflect on the gifts we are fortunate to receive, the gifts we ourselves offer, and perhaps the gifts we anxiously hope are coming to us. And to reflect on the community that brings us many of those gifts and to whom we bring our own. And who better to talk to us about all this than my friend Jacob Jansen, who brings his own gifts today. Jacob is the artistic director of TAP, Third Avenue Playworks. His bio is there in the order of service, so I will just tell you that Jacob is smart, insightful, funny, and I am looking forward to his chat today. And a reminder, after the service, you can enjoy coffee and tea in the gathering room. And when the chimes ring, discussion of the morning service will begin over here, maybe about 10 minutes after the service. All right, announcements. If anybody has announcements related to the work of this fellowship, please raise your hand, stand up. Again, Dick will find you and bring you the mic. And we have no announcements. Everybody's afraid of Dick. So, all right. Well, let's get started. Our opening words today are from Vincent van Gogh. All art is a gift. It is, first of all, a gift that the maker can do it. It is then a gift to someone else, whether they pay for it or not. The wonder of it is that we cannot get the production of these gifts stopped. Art is life seeking itself. It is our intractable expressions of love for the beauties, ideas, and epiphanies we regularly find. I framed the painting. It's now hanging in our den. I have walked this earth for 30 years and out of gratitude want to leave some souvenir. Now, flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home.
Just blow it out.
Now, if you would all please stand as you are able for our first hymn, hymn 331.
Life and its creatures, great and small, of I know.
And you may remain standing for the unison affirmation and the doxology. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast regions of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. And now it's time for joys and concerns, which is the time where you may share with us any joys and concerns you may be holding in your heart and wishing to share with this community. And again, try not to be intimidated by Dick, but he'll come to you with the microphone.
I have two joys. One is that, what's today, Sunday? Friday night, I went to the Miller Art Museum, sorry, I haven't had enough coffee yet. Miller Art Museum to see this incredible show that is there. And I know Bob had made an announcement probably a month ago. It's up until April 3rd. This young man who's 28 has just created monumental works, and Diane and I really enjoyed it. So please do get down here. And secondly, my favorite, no, she's my middle granddaughter now, is part of the court group from Shorewood High School, and they're in Madison this weekend. And I just heard this morning they are in the top 2, and they are again competing at noon. So I'm going back to watch that. I'm very proud of her.
Good morning. I have a joy and a remembrance to share. Today is the 25th anniversary of my mother's passing, so I am. She's with me today.
Lindley's, most of you know that our dear Susan Leader died last Sunday. Susan was the best. We will miss her desperately. She is the only born and raised Baptist who could tell the best Unitarian jokes as service leader. Her intelligence, her joy with nature, her beloved farm that she kept in the family for her parents and grandfathers is just a tribute to the earth and to Susan. Her memorial service will be August 6th at Carl and Jane Weiss's property, which is across the street from Susan's farm. So keep Catherine, Susan's partner, and Susan's extended family in your hearts.
I believe David Vermillion has a joy today. It's his 85th birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. And many more.
Yeah, we just got back from a week in Key West, where we had taken our grandson, 14-year-old grandson. None of us had ever been to Key West before, and it was an absolute delight. There was one element of concern, however, at the same time. We discovered a rather disconcerting lack of respect for his elders. We played chess 5 times, and he never let me win.
All right, thanks, everyone. Now is the time for the offertory. UUFTC makes many gifts of service to the community. If you are so inclined, please fill the basket with your offerings when it comes by. The Pajama Parade here can make offerings on uuftc.org.
A reading of a poem, Sometimes, by David White. Sometimes, if you move carefully through the forest, breathing, like the ones in the old stories who could cross a shimmering bed of leaves without a sound, you come to a place whose only task is to trouble you with tiny but frightening requests, conceived out of nowhere, but in this place, beginning to lead everywhere. Requests to stop what you are doing right now and to stop what you are becoming while you do it. Questions that can make or unmake a life. Questions that have patiently waited for you. Questions that have no right to go away.
At this time, you might find it appropriate to reflect on the life of our dear Susan Leader and to take a moment for quiet reflection to center yourself and be more present right here and right now.
And now a reading from Viktor Shklovsky, my favorite Russian formalist. Because we all need one, right? No less esoteric or poetic, but this is from his Art as Technique. Art exists that one may recover the sensation of life. It exists to make one feel things, to make the stone stony. The purpose of art is to impart the sensation of things as they are perceived, not as they are known. The technique of art is to make objects unfamiliar, to make forms difficult, to increase the difficulty and length of perception, because the process of perception is an aesthetic end in itself and must be prolonged.
Now please rise again as you are able for hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to be Simple."
Well, thank you all for having me here this afternoon, or this morning, not yet afternoon, again. I was up all night. I have 2 children under 2, so at this point, it is very much afternoon. So the Stony Stone, why did I read the Stony Stone? Because I remember that moment I read that. It blew my mind. Why? Because we walk through our lives numb to our being. And here's a man from over a century ago looking at the problem of existence and wondering, how can we, artists, everyone, experience more fully this moment that we have, this brief, shining, beautiful moment that we have? Because for all he knew, it was the only one he got. A little bit of Viktor Shklovsky. Viktor Shklovsky lived during an era of incredible tumult. He was born in the Russian Empire and died in the Soviet Union. His family fought on both sides of the Civil War, and he lost many. But the one thing he never lost faith in was the power of art. Because he saw art as service work, as care work. Artists care for their communities. We build the society that is yet to come on the foundation of the one that exists, as crooked and as imperfect as it may be. So I've always really enjoyed that quote by Viktor Shklovsky. I think it is kind of the most magical thing that we do, and particularly as a theater artist, as somebody who makes experiences out of shadows and bodies, I'm here to wake us up to the experience of living, to remind you of the stoniness of the stone beneath your feet, and the quality of the air around you, and potentially that electric space between people, where we actually live. So, as Alan said, I'm the artistic director of Third Avenue Playworks, right? I grew up in Wisconsin, in Kiel, just a few miles down Highway 57. And I want to talk to you all today about why art matters. Oh, that gun's going off.
I know.
But I want to talk to you about why I know that art matters, and why I know that it matters more than maybe we allow it to in our current contemporary society. And I'll illustrate that with some stories from some friends and colleagues of mine. But specifically, the idea that I want to introduce you all to is the idea of art as care work. So let's start at the beginning. What is care work? Care work, very simply put, is anything, is labor in service of social reproduction. And of course, you're probably gonna say, slow down there, Mr. Political Economist. What does that actually mean? Well, it's simple. It's nurses, it's teachers, it's people who care for others in service of some greater good beyond their own existence. And we all know that these people are essential to the functioning and health of our society. It's just that most folks would not include painters, musicians, and dancers, and actors among that group. But I believe we must. Now, okay, so who are artists in pre-modern society? Because I think we got to start at the beginning, right? Let's get down to the root of this thing. So what was art's role in our pre-modern society? Well, it's the same as it's always been. It's religious and it's political. So in those early empires, right, the people who had the free will and free time to make art were the folks who were replicating the society as it stood. So you have priests who are illustrating manuscripts. You have sculptors recreating images of gods. You have musicians creating great hymns that stir the soul. And then you have people replicating the power of the pharaoh, representing the power of it, right? And you have people who are engaged in religious festivals. For us, in our theater tradition, theater begins as a religious festival celebrating Dionysus. What it also did is it was an opportunity for Greek society to practice courtly behavior. So our great tragedian Aeschylus was writing plays that were actually court cases. That's what they were. For the polity to sit and try the case, to hear the facts and make a decision. As time moves on, as society develops, it shifts the role of the artist. And by the time we get to our era, the sort of modern era, and I'll just say the very earliest part of that in the 17th century, the 1600s, artist's role shifts a bit, and the artist becomes a servant to patrons. So no longer are they necessarily serving just the empire or a church or a temple or whatever it may be, but they're now serving a courtly master. And so the role becomes a servant role because it's subordinate. And so we see that there's this sort of subordination of the artist to some other larger power. And that becomes replicated through our society, sort of ad infinitum. And you should note that in this era, it was actually illegal for a theater maker in the 17th century in England to be without a patron. Because if you were a vagabond and you could be thrown in prison. So our history of being charlatans and ne'er-do-wells, when we just wanted to do a nice play, that's where that comes from. We're always living on the edge as theater artists. So these structures, because our history is our precedent, sets the die for the relationship that we have to art in our society. Art that replicates the social forms and the power structures that be will be favored. And we'll see that. So culture, in a very broad sense, is how society reproduces itself and reinforces its values, mores, and beliefs. What's the most popular thing right now? Marvel movies. They make so much money, right? But what do they reproduce? They reproduce these gargantuan battles between good and evil, a sort of, ancient idea of the way that the world works. And you look through that and you will see ideology represented and replicated over and over and over again. And it's important for us to understand our relationship to the art and the art making and the art that is presented to us as being the dominant form. So you can, and as we see that history evolves and as we move through time, the important and most dominant art forms are those that have a tendency to replicate the society as it is. And one of the things I want to help us all understand is, for me, art is about community, particularly theater art is about community and how we draw people into relationship with one another. So before the invention of mass media, we spent a lot of time in community, either out on the street, on the market square, in performance venues and halls, hearing lectures in churches, temples, mosques, whatever, but we were in community. And then they invented film, which is great, don't get me wrong. I've enjoyed a lot of films in my days, but we moved inside and we start being in dialogue necessarily and start looking forward. And then they invented this amazing thing called radio, where you could have it in your house. And don't get me wrong, I love radio. We did a radio play last year. We're going to do another radio play, and they're great. But it took us from the in community, being in an audience together, and set us in our homes, isolating us. And then we got screens. Little phones we can carry in our pockets. We moved from radio to TV to tiny TVs where we can be locked away in our own private little cell in dialogue with no one. Now, look, I'm no Luddite. I know that the power of these devices are incredible. They can do incredible things. And right now I'm speaking to some folks through a screen, far away. But we have foreclosed on the potential to be in community. And that's my job. It's 100% what I do, is thinking about how I bring people into community, because I know that art has a real material impact on the lives of the people who experience it and make it. So anybody who's ever worked as an artist intuitively knows that art is powerful. We are just now getting the evidence for just how powerful it is. So there's new research that shows that embodied art, so music, theater, dance, anything where your body is engaged, it radically transforms your mind and your body. So I have a friend, Clara Takarabe. She is a player with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. She is also a brain researcher at Northwestern. She's one of these people who's like exhausting, because every single thing she does at like this incredible level, and you're like, yeah, okay, Clara, that's great, yes. What wonderful and amazing thing are you doing now that I'm going to be completely gobsmacked about? Well, this year she just had her first study published in the Journal of Neurology. And what it shows is that music, medically applied or not, literally rewires your brain, okay? So it increases blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, so that is language skills, higher reasoning, suppression of fight or flight responses, things like that. And it depresses blood flow to the amygdala and the brainstem, which is fight or flight, sympathetic nervous system, the things that make us reactive, potentially violent. It also improves our medical outcomes. So people who engage with music, who go to a concert or have a musician play for them in their hospital room, will have better medical outcomes. It's a fact, proven. Also, they will have better results with things like dementia, Alzheimer's, even COVID. Why? Because it stimulates blood flow in the brain, and it creates new pathways and reinforces old pathways that may be under threat. There is other research that shows that because of the art's effect to depress reactive responses in the sympathetic nervous system, if you were to create more arts training, more arts experiences, very likely you would have a less violent society. Sounds like a good thing to me. But I'm just one of the guys who tries to do this, right? And here's the other thing. When you engage with the arts, you have better educational outcomes. Here's a disturbing fact. In the United States, more than 54% of adults are literate below a 6th grade level. 54%. Now, we always tell ourselves that no, we're literate at like 99%. Well, it's like 99% at like a 4th grade level. And let me tell you, just doing my taxes, it's not written at a 4th grade level. So then, are you literate? I don't think so. Educational attainment for students who engage in artistic practice is higher. They will go on to have greater earning potential in their life. They will go on to lead more full and deeply felt lives because they are not under threat, economic threat, social threat, and because they feel like they are in better communion. Now, my wife works for a women's shelter in Washington, D.C., and for a long time, they didn't have any sort of cultural programming. And then a friend of hers came in and they started to offer it. And one of the things that the women who lived in that shelter found was that by going to see a play, by going to see a symphony, by going and spending time in the Library of Congress and seeing all of those great books, it awakened in them a feeling of connection. Look, being able to read has value. Being fully literate has value. What doesn't have value is being able to be in connection with, say, Chaucer, right? There's no value. You can't put a dollar amount on that. But being able to be in communion with a mind that lived 1,000 years ago, it's incredible. It's basically a miracle. And yet, for many people in our society, we do not invest enough to make that a possibility. We don't see the value in it. I see value in it. Now, there are some real challenges, obviously, to building the better society that we see, right? And just for some perspective, the NEA arts funding this year is $207 million. The population of the United States is $334 million. So that's 67 cents per capita. Doesn't do a lot. Our neighbors to the north, who have one of the best funded arts programs, and I would argue paltry sum itself, they have $304 million in US dollars, but they got a population of 39 million. So that's $7 per capita. For further perspective on what our society values, total US military spending last year was $816 billion, which works out to $2,445 per capita. I could do a lot of plays with that kind of money. Now, the other fun fact about that is that they just did an audit of that spending. They could only account for 34% of it. So I'd take a rounding error in our favor. We could do a lot of good with a rounding error. But here's the fact. Coming out of the pandemic, the arts are in a very dire position. During the pandemic, things were actually pretty good. We had the most arts funding this country has ever had. $45 billion were invested in the entirety of the arts and humanities cultural sector. Just to keep it open, though. But then it went away. And frankly, most of us owe it back. So, the money's gone. But we have to keep going. Also, because of the pandemic, there is still a hesitancy in artists or in audiences to come back to the artwork, which means that there is a hesitancy from the people who give to make up for the 67 cents per capita that our government funds the arts and culture work in this country. But being artists, we're creative. We're finding ways through. Now, I'm not saying it's all going to be solved with these couple of solutions that we've got, but I can tell you that thinking about art as care work, we're going to find our way through. So there's an incredible project in Atlanta called Art Pharmacy. Actually makes art care work. A group of artists saw the lack of access that many older folk and low-income communities had to the arts, even though they lived in a great city that had incredible humanities and culture work. And they said, what if we got that Medicaid money? How can we do that? How can we get Medicare to pay for art? They took the research that my friend Clara and these other wonderful researchers around the country are doing. And they said, look, if you experience art, you're going to be healthier. We're cheaper, frankly, than pharmaceuticals, right? I'm sure, there are people in this room who pay more, in pharmaceuticals in a week than it costs a ticket, for sure. Now you apply that to a society level, right? go see a couple of plays, go see a couple of symphonies, a couple of operas, and we could be healthier and happier and pay less in health costs. Hey, seems like a double win, right? So they got a bill passed in the Georgia legislature to allow prescribers to prescribe art. And then the insurers would pay for it. I think it's great for obvious reasons, right? Because it actually does the thing that it needs to do. In many cases, the art is more effective than pharmaceutical interventions. It just doesn't make the pharma companies any money. But they've got a lot of money. So they're working currently on expanding the art pharmacy to other places. They're working on taking it to Illinois. I'm hoping to start doing a bit of lobbying here in Wisconsin, just to make people aware of these creative workarounds. And in communities like Door County or Milwaukee or Madison, where they have wonderful arts, producers, this is a great place for us to be thinking about how do we expand the pool of people who get to experience this art, because we know it has a material benefit. We know it deeply as artists. So we have to find a way to make it more accessible. And even we are doing it at TAP. We're trying to find our own way towards it. We have a program at the library where people can check out tickets for free at no cost to the end user. Because I know that for many people, for 2 tickets to $70 or whatever it is to come see a show is maybe too much. So then we have to find a way to be more charitable in the work that we do. We've also included expanding community partnership programs to think about how do you draw people to the organization? How do you draw people to the art who maybe don't think that it's for them? But I guarantee you it is. Because I grew up in a place where there was no art. I grew up in a place where there was no access to those things. And it is my mission to make sure that anybody who wants to come see one of our shows can. Because it has a material benefit. Now, that's all fine and good, right? The material thing, but we know that the role of art is bigger than that. Because have you ever gone to see a show or a concert, a dance performance, and just been left speechless? I know I have, right? So the one that pops to mind for me is this production of a play called Black Watch. It's by the National Theatre of Scotland. And it's a play about the Iraq War, right? Lots of war plays. But what this one did is it kind of exploded the notion of what the experience of that war was. And what absolutely blew my mind was it's a play where a man comes out and starts telling you, okay, this is my experience in the war, blah, blah, blah. It's set in a bar, right? And so you're looking at this bar and you're wondering, okay, what have I gotten myself into? It seems very boring. And he talks for like 25 minutes. And then all of a sudden you start to hear this sound, this whirring that becomes louder and louder and louder, and lights start to pulse, and it is the sound of a Black Hawk helicopter floating over the stage. You don't see the Black Hawk helicopter, but you see this pool of light flood around this pool table that has been there the whole time. And you didn't notice it. And then he fades away. And as he fades away, a bayonet pops up through the felt of the table. And 2 soldiers pop out of the table, holding all their gear and the machine guns and everything, and they start singing the hymn of the Black Watch. It gives me chills now, because what it is it's a confluence of sound, light, and distraction in a remarkable way that makes us feel something bigger beyond ourselves. The sort of mystery of art was that I didn't know it was coming, and I was surprised in that moment. And I felt connected to this story in a way I never would have if he had just told me the whole story the way that it felt like it was starting. Or the other one that comes to mind is I saw the National Symphony Orchestra do Tchaikovsky's The Firebird Suite. And I could sit in the last 5 minutes of that forever. I love it. I could hear it forever and ever and ever. And it was the first time I'd ever heard it played live, and I'll never forget it. Because art has the capacity to stitch us together in time and place with everyone we experience it with. So art is not just care work, it is spiritual work. Now I'm going to get to something here. It's a little dense, but we'll break it down. This is from The Gift by Lewis Hyde. Once an artist's inner gift has been realized, it may be passed along, communicated to the audience. Sometimes this embodied gift, the work of art, can reproduce the gifted state in the audience that received it. Let us say, the suspension of disbelief by which we become receptive to a work of imagination is belief, a momentary faith by virtue of which the spirit of the artist's gift may enter and act upon our being. Sometimes, then, if we are awake, if the artist was truly gifted, the work will induce a moment of grace, a communion, a period during which we too will know the hidden coherence of our being and feel the fullness of our lives. The fullness of our lives. That's it. That's what art does. It allows us to feel fully alive and to feel all of it, to make the stone stony. And now, like, that's my personal Nicene creed, right? If anything is, right? I am here to make us feel fully alive, on the surface of our skin alive, to feel that electric charge between people alive. Now, look, this book is great. It's really good, but it's very boring. Alan read it. He can attest. It's basically just a bunch of poetry analysis. But I think what he gets to in that moment specifically is what we are doing as artists. And I believe that every single person in this room and every single person outside of this room is an artist in their own way. Because I think that that is the fundamental experience of life, is creation. We recreate the world around us. And what Hyde does is he reminds us that we are here to help wake people up. Wake them up to the experience that they have on the street. Driving up here, there's that billboard that surely not everybody was kung fu fighting. It wakes me up every time I pass it. Now, it may seem like a simple little thing. It's not. It's not. Our lives can be so dull and gray. The kind of quotidian, like, worries have a narcotic effect. They put us to sleep. I wish my kid would sleep. But we can't be asleep through our lives. And we can't be awake at every moment, right? We can't. We would all lose our minds if we were in that way of being fully feeling. But those moments, those artistic moments, are the times that we can come into contact with each other. And I know that we need more of them because they're an opportunity for us to draw together wildly disparate communities who may have very little contact with one another. And I fear that we may have forgotten how to talk to one another, parts of our society. And so I want to figure out how we get to talking. Now, we created a little tagline for TAP. It seems like a marketing thing, right? Theater worth talking about is kind of our new little thing. It's not. It's not. It is not a marketing thing. I mean it. What I'm making is something that I want to spur conversation. I want to spur connection. I want to spur dialogue. Now, not every play will do that perfectly. Of course not. Like, are you kidding me? But I hope that the experience, no matter what you come into our building for, that you go, oh, I want to talk to somebody about that. I want to talk to somebody about, like, even if it's a silly little comedy, I want to talk to my friends about that. I had a fun time and made me feel something. Because I know if I can do that, I will get us on the path towards that future where I get a rounding error of the Defense Department's, misallocated funds. And I also know that then we will be drawing ourselves into community with other folks, spreading community, spreading connection, because it is too easy to feel isolated. So before I go, I just want to leave you all with this last thought. As artists, our connection is bigger. With our connection with an audience is bigger than just the patron performer relationship, right? It is actually a communion. We need you. We need you. The painter needs the viewer. The poet needs the reader. The dancer needs the audience. We are nothing without that. Art cannot happen in a void. It only happens with you. So, here's a little fun fact, another little science thing. When you go to a performance, and even today in this room, you experience something called entrainment. Entrainment is when your heartbeats sync up, your breathing syncs up, your brain waves sync up. Now, you might argue that's because we're all focused on the same thing. Nope. It is a natural, intuitive human response. You are entrained on me, and I am entrained on you. It is a communion, true communion, biological communion, spiritual communion. That is the work of art, to make us feel the stone stony in our hand, and to feel the distance that grows and collapses between us. And that connection, once created, never dies. That is the work of art. And that is art. That's care work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jacob. That was kind of thrilling. Gonna hear more of that. Come back when the chimes ring. We'll do a little more of this. All right. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our closing words are by John Murray. Go out into the highways and byways, give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it, let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light and understanding to the hearts and minds of people. Give them not hell, but hope and courage.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday.